Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Review Kate. Of course, this is our review episode. We've spent the month of October playing and screaming our way through a very, very small part of Raccoon City in Resident Evil 3. And so, Andrew, let's dive right into it. And the first thing we're talking about, of course, as we do with all of our reviews, is that we're going to talk about the aesthetics first and then the level design. Mm-hmm. And I know, first of all, you know, this is the first time both of us that I had played Resident Evil 3. Now, this is also a remake, so it means things are very much upscaled.
Yep.
I will say this is a very beautiful, in terms of horror games,
beautiful.
It's very beautiful.
There's very little that has to be said with regards to the aesthetics of this game. It's a Resident Evil game. Resident Evil has always been notorious for its visual quality, I would say, right? Even in early generations when things were, you know, PlayStation 1 graphics, and it definitely lives up to the expectations visually. There's never a moment where I was like, wow, that was poorly rendered, or that wasn't designed well. Like, the zombies, the gore on the zombies was very well executed. When I shot them, it felt like my bullet was actually doing damage to the zombie, and it wasn't like, oh, I shoot the zombie and red pops out of them, but I don't see, like, part of their face fall off, or their jaw explode, or what have you. There was actual viscera to the damaging of the zombies. So that is where I will give Resident Evil its credit.
I will back that up and also say that when I shot the zombies, I agree. I didn't feel like I was shooting like a husk of something. I was shooting like, oh, I'm actually shooting something that's got some weight to it, some thickage.
It's got some blood in it.
It's got some blood in it. You know, when you had the little things that Nemesis was creating, the little head bursters or whatever, head zombos that would grab you. You know, those shooting those things felt there was like a weight to shooting those. Not like an emotional thing, but more just like, oh, I'm shooting this. I'm not just shooting at a target. I'm shooting at like this thing.
I would hope you don't have emotional ties to zombies. Otherwise, this apocalypse is going to be very hard to get through with you, Nick. No, don't kill that random person I've never met before. Nick, we've got to do it.
But these were zombie babies.
The spiders were disgusting. The toad monsters, horrendous. I mean, they execute on visual and sound and like all of those aspects. The aesthetics of this game are top notch. Excellently executed. I mean, just visual overhaul. Like those toad monsters, man. That part was the like, I would say, of all of the things that we experienced personally, those toad monsters in that they were the most like surprising for us to deal with personally. I know that the spiders definitely gave you a run for your money. That was definitely the whole them sticking their stems down your throat.
Yes.
You definitely had it have its moments, but you know, it's a Resident Evil game. They live up to the visual quality and fidelity that I would expect from them.
And that's the thing is that I want to jump on is going back to the toad monsters and just the spiders overall. This does a really good job of like I'm not a big fan of jump scares. I think jump scares are doing jump scares very cheap. But the way they're executing this game is you're kind of expecting something to jump out at you, but it's like, you know, there are jump scares that you can tolerate because you know they're not being done in a cheap way to get a cheap scare out of you. It's like, no, you're in the sewer, something's down here, or things are down here, or you're in this caged area that's got these webs around it. You're in this nest, if you will. Something's gonna come out and get you.
Yeah.
And when it does, they do a good job of like, oh, these things are they're attached to you. Like they're chasing you. You're you know, the frog guys were really easy. They're coming out of pipes. They're coming out of little holes in the wall. Not little holes, but big holes in the wall.
The game introduces you to the initial elements that you're going to be dealing with,
right? And
then puts you in situations in which it's reasonable that those things would be jumping out at you. It's not a sudden like, There's no reason for that thing to be there. Granted, there were some times where I was like, how did like the last part with Nemesis jumping on the train, but that's story elements. We're talking about aesthetics. I think that ultimately they did a great job of establishing in their worlds, like, hey, here's this thing that you're going to be dealing with, right? Here's this ugly, horrible monstrosity that you're going to be dealing with, and now this populates the world. Be on your guard. Right. And then it allows for the jump scares to happen. So they do an excellent job of balancing that. There's no unreasonable
and my thing
kind
with
of things.
And my thing with jump scares, was the last one we were talking about with aesthetics, is just the jump scares. It wasn't like Jill backs up and Carl's right behind her. It's like, oh, hey, Jill. You know, like, that's what I mean by like cheap jump scares, you know? With this, it's like, okay, I'm in the sewers, I'm already on edge, or I'm climbing this ladder, and there's Nemesis right on top of me. And I'm like, oh my god, you know, like, it does a really good job of, like, you know, putting things in front of you to get those screams out of you, to get that fright out of you. Another thing that got screams out of us, but much different types of screams, was the backtracking. And that's going to kind of play into it will play into the level design. So I know the backtracking for you especially was something you did not much care
Horrible.
for.
It honestly, it's going to be the most important aspect for me when it comes to this review. We discussed it a lot in Ori about how the backtracking in Ori felt like it was actually gave you something. It actually provided things of value. And though maybe one time we got an extra two pouches for storage,
right,
the rest of the time that we did backtracking to go and open up those yellow locks, right? It was so unrewarding, right? So deeply unrewarding. And for a person like myself who likes to look at every nook and cranny and find and complete a game 100% and get everything out of the way, I'm sorry, but the backtracking in your game is atrocious. And unless there are things in that first level, because I know that that people are going to they're going to skip over those, because it's like, why would I, either I'm going to forget it, or I don't want to take the time to go back and get those things. But for the people who do want to go and get those things, you should make it at least somewhat rewarding, instead of, oh yeah, you got a grenade, or oh yeah, you got some ammo. Like that just, it does not fulfill the desire to go back. In Ori, it was like, oh, I've got a new ability, which means I can now access this new area, and that means that there is something that I can get that's going to improve my gameplay that much more. If, for example, like with the weapon upgrades, why can't they put the weapon upgrades, one or two of them, in those lockboxes for the guns that we're actually picking up in those areas? You know what I mean? Like, it just, it didn't make sense to me to have to backtrack, that in my desire to backtrack. And yes, I could have skipped over it, but even then, there were moments where it's like, we got all the way through the spider's nest, right?
Right.
To turn on the subway. Now we have to go all the fucking way back to the subway. And that like, come on, guys. There is an amount that we are willing to suspend our disbelief or what have you, but it just feels like padding to have us literally go all the way to one end of the level and have to go all the way back to the beginning of the level in order. It pads out runtime instead of creating, I don't know, better level design. So that's my thing about it.
While I was not as really a big fan of the backtracking, I understood why, because you have to remember that this is especially in Resident Evil 3, it's only really a 6 to 8 hour game. And I think that with the backtracking, it's also, remember Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil in general, yes, it's a zombie game, you're shooting zombies, but really the core of it, it's a puzzle game. And so, having to, while going back and forth, yes, it's a pain in the ass, I totally agree with that. I do understand that, like, hey, we'll have you go back through this area because you got the lockpick, and maybe there's something you want to pick, and yeah, it might not be worth it, but at least, there are people, there are gamers who are very curious, and there are people who want 100% things, and they're just like, well, I never knew, because the last thing you want is to, like, as you said, the gun thing, like, why couldn't a gun attachment be in those boxes?
We went to that subway substation, right, that's, like, in that first initial area, And it was like, finally we get to open up that lockbox that we've been looking at forever, and we open it up and it was handgun ammo or grenade or whatever the fuck it was, and it was like, come on, like, well, you can't, that's so unreasonable to put something in there after us taking so much time to get that lock thing.
Right.
You know?
I mean, yes,
it should be rewarding.
It's a very Christmas story, drink more Ovaltine type of moment. Ugh. You know, but the thing is, though, I think part of it was just kind of like it was the developers wanting to be, well, hey, we need to increase your curiosity, and yeah, they might open it and it won't be up to what they want, but again, it's like, you never know, because, like, maybe, who knows, maybe there's a point, you know, could have been a point where there was a gun upgrade in the box, but you just decide, oh, I'm gonna go buy it. I'm you know, because if you got like a couple gunpowders in a row or some bullets in a row, you're like, oh, it's not worth it. And you just happen to pass over that one case. So I think that, you know, it's one of the, I mean, it's honestly, it's kind of like gambling. It's like you hit a little bit, and you're like, okay, I won, you know, $1, and then you keep hitting these little low things, and you're like, okay, something's big has to hit at one point. So maybe it's when you get to that one case and it has that like gun upgrade or something, and you're like, this is what I wanted for. This is why I was opening those things. Now, I'm not saying it's a good mechanic, but what I'm saying is that I think that the part of this game is, again, it being a puzzle game at its core, really is something like we need something to create intrigue and just something that people can come across and discover for themselves. So I think that's why they did it. Again, I you know, don't necessarily agree with it, but I can understand why they would do something like that.
I can agree with that, but the problem with them doing that is that you have to incentivize your audience to open up every case. Moving forward, if we were to continue to play this game, I'm not incentivized to open up every case anymore. Right. That's the thing, and that's that's why I'm comparing Ori and this is that when you backtrack in Ori, there's an incentive to go back and discover everything because those things are actually useful later down the road. There were way too many instances where we would use a lockpick to open up a chest or open up a locker or open up a thing, and there wasn't a moment where it's like, wow, we really got something that was actively going to be useful. I would say a good 75 to 80% of the time that we opened up those cases, it was like first aid spray or handgun ammo or grenade, and that just it doesn't make it feel, when I can kill zombies with equal I mean, yes, it takes more bullets in a handgun than it does a shotgun or whatever, but you have to have much more of an incentive for people to grab those things. It's the first level, it's a short game, I understand, but in order for backtracking to be worth it in those cases, you gotta make it, you have to provide incentives for people to really fully look at everything moving forward. And again, back to the level design aspect of it, yes, it's a puzzle game, and I understand being able to break down puzzles and try to, you know, at least, I mean, because the level is the puzzle. You're trying to, you know, open up different areas and get, you know, different ladders and whatnot. But the issue that I had with this, we only got through the first level in our playthrough, and yes, we weren't playing it every day, you know, doing, you know, whatever. But the issue that I take with it is that even though it's a puzzle game, in the puzzle like this felt like it was contained within a box, right? Mm-hmm. That I'm trying to unlock this box instead of saying, here is a long, windy hallway, right? And in order for me to get through every single door of this hallway, I mean, I'm not saying that the level design needs to be a hallway, but in order for me to get through every door of this hallway, there are certain things that I need to pick up along the way that, oh, well, now I can unlock this this part of this door, and oh, I found this piece in the first level that I wasn't able to use in the first door, but now I can use it on the second door, right? There never felt, honestly, at least to me, it never felt like there was a forward motion in the puzzle. It just felt like, hey, you're in the first area, now it's time to unlock all the things in the first area. It didn't give me a sense of forward momentum. It just felt like I was going back to unlock things in the same space. Does that make sense? Rather than like, oh, I'm picking up things.
Yeah, you felt like, yeah.
It felt contained within one small zone rather than...
we gotta feel like we're getting
making actual progress.
Yeah, I totally get it. But, I mean, again...
Forward motion.
But, again, to quote-unquote kind of play, devil's advocate a little bit, I understand why they did that, because it's like, I think part of it is they want you to give up, in a sense, and be like... Then you get to a certain point where you're facing off an enemy, and it's like, oh, shit, maybe I should have opened those cases. But moving on... we gotta talk about the controls of the game. So, when I played the game, we played in the system mode, and I talked about how, system mode for me, especially in the beginning, just didn't feel so assisting. That could have been solved if there was, like, some auto-aim. If I could take L2, and I have to use a stick to aim. If I could just, like, tap it, and automatically pulls the gun to where I gotta go, hit the right trigger, boom, good.
There weren't any reassignment button options in this either. That's another thing. This game came out this year, 2020. Yeah. Where is your reassignment? I'm sorry, at this point, it's been in so many games years prior to this. So many indie games and indie developers have done that it's kind of unexcusable in my opinion.
I want to say, when we say reassignment, we mean like full button remapping. Like, you can be able to remap your buttons. You should and stuff like that.
As a large scale title.
Pick and choose where you want to put your buttons.
It's 2020. If this game came out 10 years ago, it's a little bit more excusable because it wasn't as prevalent by comparison.
Right.
Honestly, at this point, button remapping should be available in every game. Like it to me, it's not there. There isn't really a solid argument of especially in a game this important gaming wise, you should be able to remap your buttons. It's a simple thing that like I really feel like at this point with the technology that we have game system wise, you should be able to remap all of your buttons.
And I think and also going into from controls to accessibility, I think that where this game could have been more accessible was the ability to fully remap the buttons where you want them. When you have an assisted mode, yes, make enemies easier to take down, but also put an auto aim feature on there. Do something to just make the shooting mechanic itself easier, because there was that time in that Nemesis fight where I had to shoot the cans, and I'm like, oh my god, and there was a point where I'm like, oh man, I would have had a shot right here, but I had to screw around with the stick and focus right on the cans. If I just had a trigger where I could just, like, again, GTA is the best example of, I love that, my favorite auto aim feature, because you hold L2 in terms of play or left trigger, and you immediately go right to where you gotta shoot, and you shoot, and then that to me makes it fun. It makes shooting fun. I hate having to take a stick and move the camera around, and oh my god, am I shooting the right thing? Do I be so precise and make sure I'm hitting this? It kind of takes me out of it,
I will say a system that they could implement, because Resident Evil notoriously has been, it's been built around the claustrophobic suspense of, I've got to pull this off in time. I think what they could have implemented that would have been fair to the game design to allow it to be still stressful for people to pull things off is, on assisted mode, they put a reticle, right, on areas in which you can hit the enemy, right? Like area on the head, on the fuel tank that you were shooting at the end of the boss fight of the last episode. Put a reticle, right? It's your responsibility as the player to get your aiming, your reticle on that thing, on that little circle, on the space, and that allows you to line up your shot, and that's what allows you to take your shot, right? Because they still need to be able to make it difficult for you to get these shots off, because it is it's still a horror suspense game, but at the same time, this is assisted mode. It's designed to assist you in being able to pull off these fights and make it a little easier for you to get through the experience of the game. So putting something that allows you to lock on to certain targets would be amazing. I don't think that it should be like GTA where you button press and you're automatically to it, because that kind of takes away the suspense of surviving this horrible fight. But if you were able to lock on to something, if you're able to pull off like, oh, I was able to get my reticle just in time to hit that thing right in the right time.
Right.
Great, fantastic. That's amazing. Perfect assisted mode. But this is assisted mode. And even the enemies where they're like, yeah, it's easier to take them down. Our handgun shots to zombies' heads was still taking a lot of damage. They would go down. We still have to double tap them while they're dead. I don't know if that's really assisted mode. Like, there's a balance that has to be struck there, but assisted mode could have been more assisted. I definitely liked playing assisted mode, but I'm also I'm not playing with a handicap. Like, I'm not playing with the need for these things to be implemented. But even then, there were times where it just assisted mode did not feel as assisted as it could possibly have been. So
one final thing I'll say on assisted mode before we give our actual ratings for the game. I think that, as somebody who has a handicap, somebody who is disabled, the suspense, I believe, even if you were to do a GTA style lock-on system with the guns, I feel like the suspense would still be there because Nemesis was still moving at a decent pace, monsters were still moving at a decent pace, so that right there, it's like, okay, there's still a timing mechanism. So instead of having to fool around with the aiming and like circling around and all this other stuff, it's, yes, you're on, you can shoot, but at the same time, like, they were working. It wasn't like they were moving at like glacial paces. There were things that, like, aesthetically or just with the movements of the enemies, that could have been a little bit enhanced more to ensure that that suspense was still there, to ensure that that thing was still there. Like, again, it's all just timing attacks and stuff like that. But I think that you could still have something like that in there. I do like your idea of, yeah, you just drag your monocle over to where you got like
and then
like a red area,
it automatically locks on. I think
yeah.
that's like a fair compromise for at least for the developers of the game.
Yeah, but overall, I mean, it wasn't the worst thing that I've encountered.
It could have been much better.
So that being said, let's give our scores. Andrew, I'll have you go first since I believe I went first with Ori. What would you give it?
I honestly, because of the accessibility and because of the backtracking, I'm personally going to give it an unmemorable rating.
Really?
I really did not. The backtracking ruined the experience for me. It genuinely did not make me feel. It didn't make me enjoy the game. It felt more like a labor than an actual enjoyable experience, and that to me just removes it. I think it's memorable in the visual aspect, in the story aspect, in like those areas. Those are what save it for me. But the backtracking and the lack of accessibility for me, I don't really. It didn't really meet standards for me when it comes to games. It's not. There's so much more that they could have done for the gaming community as a whole. I think that's why I give it an unmemorable rating.
So I think if we're basing this off of, like, as you said, like with story and graphics and just overall aesthetic, for me this would be a press start. This would be something that you would just have to jump into immediately and play. Now I'm gonna immediately jump back and like play more of this. I want to finish the game and stuff like that. But again, our reviews are based on controls. How does the game play? All these things. If you're somebody with a disability like I am, how would this game fare? And I feel to share sentiment. I don't feel like it would fare as well as people would want, or we would have hoped that it would fare. I don't know if I can give it an unmemorable, because it does have the assistant mode. Granted, it's not the best, but they did. I feel they feel like they did what they quote unquote could with assistant mode in there. I think I'm gonna have to give this, because I mean just to be fair to the game, shooting the frogs with the rocket launcher was a one-hit KO when they opened their mouths and stuff like that. I think I'm gonna have to go with an average, because I did feel a little bit with certain enemy types it was a little bit better to take them down compared to other ones. Control-wise, I would have liked full-on butt remapping, but for the game, like, I didn't have to configure, like, there was no part where, yes, it was annoying that I had to move the stick around and, you know, get precise to where I need to shoot things. However, at the same time, to use Breath of the Wild as an example, I didn't have to contort my hand in a weird way to shoot. I could literally push the L2 trigger in to aim, use my sub to use the stick, get locked onto it when I could, and then hit R2 to shoot it. So it wasn't the worst shooting mechanic. The only thing was just the aiming could have been like, it would be nice to have an auto aim feature in there. But to me, that's not make or break, because if that was, then that would break a lot of like FPSs and a lot of other shooting games, you know. So I'm gonna give it an average because I did like some of the elements, a good amount of the elements in there. The backtracking, I do agree, was a pain in the ass. But going back to what I said earlier, I felt like it was kind of like a necessary evil, if you will, to a certain extent. So I'm gonna give it an average I mean Resident Evil 3 an average, just on the basis of those things that I'd said. But what did you think of Resident Evil 3? What, you know, have you guys played it? If so, let us know. What do you think of the game itself? What do you think of its controls? What do you think of our scores? Let us know. And hey, as always, subscribe to us here on YouTube, and be sure to hit that bell icon, because when you do, whenever we post new videos of the show and new episodes, you're gonna get a notification saying, hey, new episode of ReviewCade is up, go check it out. Be sure to hit us up on Twitter, we're at ReviewCade there, also on Instagram as well. And hey, be sure to hit us up on Facebook, facebook.com/ReviewCade. We got some things we post there as well, some polls and stuff like that, or just some questions we post and stuff like that, asking, we want your intake on, hey, what are you playing? What games are you looking most forward to? And stuff like that. What do you think about Cyberpunk being delayed till December? You know? But yeah, so be sure to hit us up on social media, and we'll get right back at you. And hey, if you have a game you want us to play, email us, reviewcade@gmail.com. And we will look and see if we can find the game you want us to play, and hey, we'll play on the show. But as always, thank you so much for supporting us, and we will see you all next time.
Bye. Next time on ReviewCade.
We had such plans for this world. Our Earth, so mercifully cleansed by the meteor they named Apophis. We had such plans, all thwarted by one man, Nicholas Rain. With the push of a button, our future was ended. The arcs emerged. The ecopods came tumbling down, all premature, pouring life back into the barren lands, starting the cycle of life anew, as we had planned to do with our own species. Our plans were thwarted by the naive and arrogant masses. The cleansing of our weakened species was hindered. Our aid selfishly refused. They chose their own pitiful existence over the future of the breed. Such hubris. They thought us defeated. We let them believe us defeated. But we moved underground. We watched their petty squabbles, their meaningless turf wars, their childish attempts at order from chaos, and we grew strong. Our science, our expertise, all aligned, all with one sole purpose: the surgical culling of the weak. Man reborn! We tear down the defenses. We take their compounds. We take the arcs. We raise their settlements and townships to the ground. Tonight marks the beginning of the cleansing. Tonight marks the rebirth of the authority!